July 1890. The yellowed wheat fields of the small French village of Avers ripple gently in the breeze. The sky is hazy, the horizon uncertain. In this silence, a lonely man walks. He holds a pistol in his hand. That man is Vincent van Gogh, whom we now know as one of the greatest painters in the world. But at that time, he was known not for success but for loneliness and despair. Hours later, a gunshot would echo across these fields, marking the most dramatic moment of Vincent's life. But did he really take his own life? Or was this story far more complicated than it appeared? Vincent's story begins in 1853, a quiet town in the Netherlands. But his inner world was complex from the start. He was named after his older brother, who died a year before he was born. Every week, as he went to church with his family, he saw his own name and birth date on the gravestone. Was this just a coincidence, or a dark shadow that accompanied his life? His childhood passed quietly and withdrawn. His attention to detail led him to see nature and people from a different perspective. In his youth, he tried many professions. He worked as an art dealer, as a teacher, and even chose the path of preaching, but he found no peace in any of them. He was always searching for a place where he truly belonged, a purpose to satisfy his soul. And finally, he found that quest in painting. There was only one person who kept Vincent standing on this difficult journey, his brother Theo. Their bond was not only a blood tie, but a spiritual refuge. Theo was both Vincent's financial supporter and his greatest source of morale. In his letters, Vincent often addressed his brother, sharing his own hopes and fears. "Sometimes only colors keep me alive," he once said. Theo truly believed in Vincent's talent and called him to Paris, thinking he should meet the painters of the time. This call would open a brand new chapter in Vincent's life. When Vincent went to Paris in 1886, he stepped into one of the most intense and transformative periods of his life. Paris was then the heart of art, Monet chasing light, Degas seeking ways to capture movement, Toulouse-Lautrec painting the city's bohemian spirit. Vincent was both enchanted and worn out by this environment. His palette, previously accustomed to dark and heavy tones, gradually brightened in Paris. Yellows, blues, and greens became bolder. He learned the freedom of light and color from the Impressionists, the rhythm of composition from the Pointillists. But he adapted all these techniques to his inner storm, creating a completely new language of expression. It was during this time that he met Paul Gauguin. Gauguin's understanding of painting was completely opposite to Vincent's. Gauguin had a more calculated, more symbolic approach. Vincent was a painter who transferred his emotion onto the canvas as it was, working instinctively. Nevertheless, they seemed to see what the other lacked. Vincent saw Gauguin not only as a friend, but also as the foundation of the artist colony he dreamed of. Therefore, he invited him to Arles, to the Yellow House. At first, the Yellow House was a dream come true for Vincent. He prepared for days, decorated the walls with his paintings, opened the best wine, and arranged the house not just as a studio, but as a sanctuary for artists. When Gauguin first arrived, he was impressed by Vincent's energy. They worked together, painted the same landscapes from different perspectives, and had long conversations about art, but soon their differences deepened. Gauguin was more mentally disciplined, while Vincent's intense and changing mood wore him out. For Vincent, Gauguin was not just a friend, but also a mechanism for approval. He wanted to earn his praise. However, Gauguin began to feel uncomfortable with Vincent's dependent attitude. Arguments increased. They had long, increasingly harsh discussions about how colors should be used, the purpose of art, and even who was the more real painter. This tension grew like a storm on the walls of the Yellow House. And on the night of the 23rd of December, 1888, this storm broke. When the argument reached its peak, Vincent took a razor and confronted Gauguin. This moment was the last straw for Gauguin. He quickly left the house. Vincent, in the midst of loneliness and mental collapse, cut off a part of his own ear. He wrapped the piece in a cloth and gave it to a woman working at a brothel. This event made the public see him completely as the mad painter, but perhaps this was a moment where he silently expressed the unbearable burden of his soul. After this event, Vincent voluntarily admitted himself to the asylum in Saint-Rémy. his days they were both the most challenging and the most productive of his life. The sky he looked at through the iron bars of his hospital room reflected as stormy whirlpools on his canvases. He frequently had crises at night and devoted himself to painting during the day. He painted the olive trees in the garden, lavender fields, and the light filtering through the corridors. He also painted the starry night during this period. Perhaps those swirling stars were the purest expression of the chaos and longing for freedom in his mind. Doctors said he sometimes completely withdrew inside himself and other times approached the canvas with great energy. For Vincent, painting was the only way to survive there. In just the end of 1889, with Theo's support, he moved to the village of Auvers-sur-Oise. He lived under the supervision of Dr. Gasha and experienced perhaps the most productive time of his life. Weeks, he painted more than 70 paintings. Especially Wheatfield with Crows, with its gloomy brushstrokes and black birds, seemed to foreshadow his approaching end. On the morning of the 27th of July, 1890, Vincent went to the fields again. That evening, he returned to his lodging gravely wounded. A bullet had hit his chest, struck his ribs, and stopped near his spine. It did not directly damage his internal organs, therefore he was able to walk for some time after the injury. The classic narrative says he took his own life, but there were many inconsistencies. Where he got the gun was unknown, he had no painting materials with him, and the angle of the wound looked unusual. Some researchers believe two young men known in the area accidentally fired the gun while playing, and Vincent kept silent to protect them. Whatever the case, he died in the hospital in the arms of his brother Theo. According to rumor, when Theo asked him, "Why did you do this, Vincent?" Vincent's answer was short and heavy, "That's why." And maybe Vincent's story truly gains meaning here. He struggled all his life to be understood, but it was after his death that people truly spoke with him. Today, when we look at his paintings, we don't see his loneliness, but our loneliness. His pain is actually our pain, his colors, our hope. Vincent van Gogh perhaps never reached the place he was searching for. But the mark he left touches millions of hearts today. Maybe that's why, when we look at a starry night sky, we still feel his brushstrokes.